Hey, my awesome art students. Look, I know that being stuck at home can be pretty dang boring, but this can also be a wonderful opportunity for art. So get your sketchbooks ready because we're going to talk about art and make some art. Now, the lesson today is about how space is used in art. You see, on a flat surface like a wall or like on a piece of paper, we perform an amazing miracle in art by making something look three-dimensional on a two-dimensional surface. That is, we take something that's flat and make it look like it has depth, make it look like it has space to it, even though it's flat. In stories, they do this oftentimes by having a beginning, a middle, and an end. So they make it look like something takes a long time, even though you're reading a story that's actually very quick for you to read. Now, in art, we tell that same story with a background, a middle ground, and a foreground. Okay? So in a traditional landscape drawing or painting, the items that are far away are called the background. Now, how do we show that something is far away when we're looking at a flat surface? You see, our perspective of seeing items that are smaller in proportion to the items that are around us give us the visual cue that they're far away. And also, you can spend less time on the little details for those items that are far away because we're not going to see the details that are far away. Along that same line of thought, colors of those items will often be darker, they'll be more subdued. You're not going to see as much color, you're not going to see as much variation, you're not going to see as much detail. So mountains, clouds, treetops, things like that are common background images in landscapes. Now, for example, here's an all plein air painting I did over at Jolla Cove. It looks very generic, but this actually is a real place. And right here you see you've got your background with your sky, with your clouds. There's not a lot of detail, but it's far away. And then you've got this back part of the ocean, the farther away part of the ocean. It's darker. There's a lot less color, a lot less detail. It just looks kind of uniform. And then as you get closer, you get more and more color, more and more waves. And then you get to the beach where you actually have a lot of detail. So this is the foreground. And then here's your middle ground right here where you're showing the back of something. And then here's your background. So the foreground will show items that are very close. And these objects will seem large. They'll be detailed. They'll overlap the items that are intended to look far away. So a tree in your front yard will look incredibly large in comparison to the mountains that are further down in the background. The foreground is this wonderful area for you to highlight animals, people, insects, flowers, whatever you like. And these will be the featured items in your foreground, the featured items of interest in your artwork. And as such, they will be large, they will be colorful, they will be detailed, they'll be expressive. Making a frog look larger than a mountain may not necessarily make sense when you think about it, but in art, this is how we show that that frog is closer than the mountain. And in the middle ground illustrates items that are in between the background and the foreground. The items in between the frog and the mountain may be flowers, trees, a lake, or something else in the landscape. Middle ground items interact more with the other items in the image because they interact with the background and with the foreground. Middle ground will overlap the background like the mountains, but will be overlapped by items that are in the foreground. So the middle ground is really what brings an artwork together, making not just a drawing of a frog or a mountain, but a landscape. Now I have a digital example that I'm going to switch to now that will demonstrate this even more so. Okay, guys, in talking about background, middle ground, and foreground, I've created this little graphic a bit of graphic art here to help demonstrate it. Now I'm going to take these items off bit by bit, and we can start the image from the beginning. Okay, so first things first, we're going to bring in the sky. This is our background. The farthest thing away from us, as far as the image is concerned, is our sky. And then we're going to bring in the middle ground, which is a set of mountains in this case. And then we're bringing in the foreground, which is a foggy forest with a lake And this is your traditional landscape right here. So beefing it up right here, we've got a wonderful landscape. But then if you want to, and so of course the lake is the closest thing to you. And so that's at the bottom of the screen, and it's going to have a lot of detail. You can see the reflections in it and everything. And then of course we've got the foggy trees, which are a little bit further. And then of course you've got your mountains and then your background with the clouds and sky. And then if you want to add even more to your foreground, we've got this wonderful frog here hanging out on a rock next to a pine tree. So this illustrates the concept. Of course, the frog looks really big in comparison to the lake and the trees. The trees look tiny in comparison to this frog. The mountains look like pebbles in comparison to this frog. But of course, the frog is up close to us. So of course he's nice and big. So this is our perspective to show us what's closer and what's farther. So here's foreground again. And then midground, and then background.
Yeah, but you can build up quickly. It's all good.
So there we go for that example. Okay, and now we're back. I hope that illustrated it very well. In your sketchbooks, I want you to try to focus on taking your drawings of objects and setting them in an environment. When you draw a bird, set some flowers around it. Show some flowers that are small, less detailed, less colorful, and some that are bigger, and some that are one or two that are as big as your bird. So you can see that these things are the items that are up close, right? Now, for the mural last semester, I painted the scenery that was in the background and the middle ground, and the students painted the wonderful characters that were in the foreground. For this mural coming up, fingers crossed, the current plan after consulting with you guys was that you would paint the background of mountains, clouds, fields with animals and such like that, whatever it was you guys wanted, and that I would be painting the people that would be in the foreground. So since you'll be painting the background and the middle ground, it's important for you guys to learn how to create these amazingly important features. So it's time to fill your sketchbooks, guys. I want to start seeing things like this right here, where you've got, for example, this right here actually has a background, it has a middle ground, and this one actually has 4 areas. This also has a middle foreground right here and right here, and then it's got a foreground where you've got this road and then this tree and this hill that you're actually standing on. You see, something like this shows depth because you've actually got a road right here that you start off at the beginning and then your eyes travel back and you can see that the road continues in the hill behind us, the hill that goes further on. So maybe you could start on this road and then eventually wind up on the road that continues on this hill, and then eventually wind up taking the road to get to these mountains, like maybe you're trying to drive to Mammoth or something like that. So it actually shows depth, and you can do this just with a simple drawing. You can do this in your sketchbooks. Now, a lot of your sketches, now here's one that illustrates the tree a bit more, and in a rock rather than so much the road. The road would have been right here. But yeah, here's a similar way in which I was working on that same theme. So you can show your depth. Now, you don't always have to have exactly a middle ground, a foreground, or even a middle ground, a foreground, a middle ground. You don't have to have all that. You could actually get away with just having a background and a foreground. Right here, this is an all-plane air painting I did that was at Mission Trails Park. This was sunrise at Mission Trails Park. So you just see a background and a foreground right here, because what I was trying to illustrate was the sunrise over the mountains right here. So you can see the sun peeking over the mountains and then the sun rays coming up over the mountains. So you really just have the sky, and then you have the sun coming up over the mountains right here. So you just have a background and a foreground. So at least have a background and a foreground. But the more depth you add to it, the more layers you add to your painting, the more story you can tell with it. And that's what we want to do with our murals. We want to tell a story. We want to show depth. We want to show time, the passage of time. We want to show that we are within a setting right here. Now, for example, here, for my last example, right here, this is a famous painting right here by a painter named Bouguereau. This is actually called The Young Shepherdess. This was done in the 1800s. So this is actually it's even a vertical, like what we're going to hopefully be doing on the pillars down in the courtyard. So see, you've got this person in the middle right here, and then the background, you've got the sky, you've got the clouds right here. You can't see it very well here, but you've got clouds, and then you've got some mountains and valleys in the background and plains, and then you've got her standing in a field with some sheep. So we're actually probably going to be doing something that's kind of similar to this right here, this kind of setting where you've got somebody who's rural, who's out managing fields, who's out managing animals, things like that. So try to keep in mind that we're telling a story and that we're going to be painting something like this. So when you guys work on your sketchbooks, make sure that you show a background, a middle ground, a foreground, show some depth, show an environment. All right, guys? And I can't wait to see your sketchbooks, and I hope to see you guys soon.